Hi, I'm Underbelly, and you suck at producing. They say you can't polish a turd. Well, I say try mastering it. What does that mean? I don't know. Let's get started. Okay, so check it. Mastering is the very last step of the production process, usually there to correct slight imbalances in the mix and make the whole turd nice and loud. Now, ideally, you'd be able to afford a mastering engineer, but these waste management specialists are expensive, and sometimes you just want to polish that turd yourself. Let's go inside our computer devices and see how the mastering is done. Okay, so check it. Here we have our unpolished turd. Let's take a listen. It's looking a little jagged around the edges. So what we're going to do, I'm going to loop the busiest part of the turd and we're going to add an EQA. And it's important that we turn on all 8 points of the EQ and we change it to my favorite filter type, the O face. Now what we're going to do is we're going to open up the EQA and we're also going to turn up the Q values of each of these points all the way up. And what that's going to do is that whenever we turn up the gain on one of these points, you'll notice that it's a very thin line here, very thin an incision. This allows us to selectively hear just a very, very thin band of the EQ and just kind of nail little pieces of the turd and excavate them. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the track and starting on the very far right, the highest point of the frequency spectrum, we're going to slowly sweep down and surgically excavate anything that might make the turd a little jagged, such as a used needle or glass that you might have swallowed. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the beat. I'm going to be very, very quiet for this because I really need to concentrate here. And whenever we find one of those little jagged pieces there, we're going to excavate it. These pieces are called resonant peaks. All right, so let's just take a listen. Okay, so nothing there yet. Here it comes. Very slowly. Oh, God. Very slowly. Oh. Mm. Oh. Okay. Oh, gosh. Okay, so we just noticed that that little piece right there really stuck out at us. So what we're going to do is once we've identified a resonant peak, we're just going to lower the gain knob here just to kind of eliminate that little frequency there. And the reason why I'm using the gain knob is because if I were to kind of drag down on this, I would risk losing the exact placement of the resonant peaks there. So now that we've found that little piece of syringe, let's go ahead and keep going. Oh gosh. Okay, let's see what we got here. Oh, okay, so that's just like needles in my ears. Let's keep going from there. More surgically. Oh god, it's just like this cancer in my ear holes. Okay, so check it. So I've gone through the entire frequency spectrum of this turd here, and I've identified all the resonant peaks and removed them. You'll notice that I actually had to use two EQ8s here to identify and remove all the shattered glass and syringes in Uncle Joe's turd. I was able to very easily create another EQ8 just by hitting duplicate and then hitting reset all gains. That way we preserve the filter shape and the Q values of each of these points. Wowzers. I also like to group my EQ8s together so I can turn them on and off at once and hear the difference. So this is with the glass still in the turd. And this is without it. So we're essentially removing any jaggedness in the turd, and I also like to add one more EQ8 right at the beginning of this chain here. And this here, I'm going to actually use the mid side mode to remove any stereo bass that might be cluttering up the sub frequencies of my mix. This allows us to remove just the frequencies that are out of phase, which results in kind of stereo weirdness if you're playing out in the club. So check it. If you can hear super wide frequencies here only. And we're just going to eliminate all the wide bass stuff around 55 hertz to just make sure we're not super stereo in that bitch. And then let's go ahead and actually roll off the bottom around 30 hertz as well. I noticed that sometimes that actually paradoxically adds to the bass. Wowzers. So now that we have our EQ out of the way, we've identified all the shattered glass. Now it's time to squeeze the turd together gently. And the way we're going to do that is using a compressor. We're going to have very slow attack and release times. So 150 on the attack, 300 on the release. And we're just going to barely squeeze that turd together. We want to preserve the turd shape. Wowzers. So you notice that we're just barely touching the gain reduction here knob, resulting in only about a dB or two of gain reduction. We're just trying to make this as transparent as possible. We don't want anyone to know that we've been playing with turds. And if you're really fancy, you could add your own secondary compressor in front of it to give it a little bit more character. But for us plebeians, one compressor to just gently glue the turd together should just be enough. And then finally, we have our limiter. Okay, so check it. The limiter allows us to turn up the signal without ever actually going above 0 dB and clipping. So check it. Let's just continue. We're going to slowly increase the gain knob here until we start to see the gain reduction meter peak around -6 dB. Wowzers. So that's very, very loud. I'm going to turn down the track volume there. And I'm also going to adjust the release. I found that a very short release time allows us to crank the volume of the limiter higher than we could otherwise. However, it comes with an increased risk of distortion. So I usually like to leave my release time around 3 to 5 milliseconds. Wowzers. And congratulations, you have now fully polished a turd. Go ahead and give yourself a tap on the wrist. Okay, so check it. Be sure to listen to your master on as many different systems as possible. And also be sure to compare it to other turds of a similar genre to make sure it measures up. I'm Underbelly. Peace out.